Hello everyone, this is Freedom Master Gary, and today we'll be showing you a game by world champion Magnus Carlsen versus former world champion Vladimir Kramnik, a true heavyweight battle. This is played in the 2015 Memorial Tournament for Gashimov, and let's get right to it. White plays e4, and Kramnik replies e5. Magnus plays knight f3, Kramnik plays knight c6, bishop b5, the Spanish, and Kramnik, as usual, employs the Berlin defense that he is known for vouching for against Garry Kasparov, which Magnus himself has copied against Anand. And so it's basically like student versus master in this. Magnus being the student, Kramnik being his mentor, indirectly. Magnus plays d3. He refuses to go into the main line Berlin, which could occur after castles, knight e4, pawn d4, knight to d6, bishop takes, pawn takes bishop, pawn takes pawn, knight f5. So this is the standard Berlin defense, which Kramnik is the most in the world. He's probably the best player of the Berlin. So Magnus decides to deviate and play the anti-Berlin defense, and Kramnik plays bishop c5 here, just developing, and Magnus plays c3, controlling the center. Magnus doesn't want to put the knight on c3. He prefers to possibly bring the knight to g3 and then get a d4 in with the help of c3. So basically, white, doesn't want to be symmetrical and play something like knight c3 instead of c3. So this would be kind of dull. So, because if you're playing white, you have to try something. Kramnik replies castle. Magnus also castles, and d6. So fairly standard stuff. Both players are developing their minor pieces. They have castle. They have reasonable control of the center. And here, I think Magnus makes an offbeat move. He plays h3, which is, a reasonable move. Now, what's the idea? The idea is to discourage bishop g4. Not right now, but whenever white plays d4, this bishop g4 stuff might be annoying because the d4 pawn will fall. So I guess white is also making a waiting move to see what black does before playing d4, or even dumping the whole idea and then going for knight b2, rook e1, knight f1, knight g3. So I think Magnus is waiting to see what Kramnik does, and Kramnik does show his hand. He plays this move knight e7. Again, this is also to the untrained eye, this looks weird, but actually it's quite simple. Black wants to improve his knight position, go to g6, where the knight is more capable of jumping into f4 later. Perhaps this knight could go h4, f4. Also, notice how this bishop looks kind of out of place now, right? It's like, what am I doing here? And so basically against those two things. The main move actually is to play a6, which invites white to keep the bishop with bishop a4, or some people might even take, and this is also considered equal because black has two bishops and white has better pawn structure. Either way, Kramnik decides to just not give that choice and play knight e7, and Magnus takes that first opportunity to play d4, especially since the knight's not controlling the center anymore. d4. It looks like black's in trouble because these two bishop and pawn are attacked, but since this knight's attacking this pawn, white won't be able to win a pawn after bishop b6, which is what Kramnik played. For example, if the pawn takes, black has two options. Black can either take the pawn, I would just do that, and then take with the knight. Black has a wonderful position. So the bishop's attacked, all the pieces are out. I mean, this one's going to come out next move. So Magnus plays after bishop b6, Magnus obviously doesn't take the pawn on e5. It's essentially trading this pawn for this pawn. You don't want to do that. He plays bishop d3, and I haven't really seen this kind of bishop coming to d3 in Spanish, actually. So this is kind of a first for me. This position is not typical. It's very rare. Usually the bishop goes to a4 after a6 and then c2. So there's a little bit of a, some tactical tricks here, which Kramnik goes for. Kramnik plays d5. Wow. All 4 pawns are under huge stress here. It's going to blow up any moment. So this is a situation that needs a lot of care. So I explored every single option. So first of all, white can take this pawn with the knight, or just stay. So Magnus played knight d2. Now why not play pawn takes? Well, I'll start the first one, pawn takes, which is a blunder because e4. That'd be embarrassing. Alright, let's look at the other one. Pawn takes pawn, this one. Here the knight can just take this, and again, I think this has improved the position. I mean, think about what happened here. Pawn over here, knight over here, now it's more advanced, right? So I think black's better off. Another move that white could play is knight e5, but again, black is better off compared to the situation before this happened, right? So Magnus decides to just do up piece. Let black do the work, taking the pawn, so that black spends another move, just getting rid of the pawns. The knight will recapture with bringing out a knight, which is exactly what happened. He takes, knight takes. So notice the difference. Instead of us taking and then having his piece get activated, we're the ones making him take and getting our pieces activated. Kramnik plays knight e4 because Magnus had the chance to double the pawns. You don't want to have that to happen. So knight e4, bishop e4 is played. And I like white's position here because of this really strong bishop. It's attacking both sides. This bishop is also eyeing the king side. Knight's in a good position. Queen could potentially go to c2 and combine with the bishop. So I really like the position for white here. Although objectively it should be around equal, because Kramnik hasn't made, he played logical chess, he hasn't made much mistakes. Obviously this pawn must go, so Kramnik took. Now you'd think that Magnus would, a reasonable player would just take the pawn, maybe with the knight or with the pawn. I mean, you could have taken with the knight. But I think Magnus tried to spice it up a bit, and he played this intermediate move, queen c2, hitting h7, and developing a queen. I mean, why not, right? So Kramnik has to waste a move with h6. Now, again, Magnus could go for capturing the pawn after perhaps rook d1. It's a reasonable move, but another intermediate move, a4, puzzling. Now, I kind of broke down the point of this move. Basically, it's to team up with the bishop on e4, and also hitting the bishop on a6. First of all, you want to try to attack the bishop with a5, and then a6, pinning the pawn, causing all sorts of problems. Also, when the bishop is going to be very vulnerable on c5, it's going to be prone to a lot of attacks. So, Kramnik, seeing this diagonal, played c6, which is a very reasonable move. Giving a square for the bishop, blunting this bishop by putting 2 stone walls in front of it. Let's look at the alternative. Can Kramnik accept the pawn? Which is, I wouldn't try this at home, right? Now, before recapturing the pawn, white can do another intermediate move. And then queen is attacked. Queen has to go here, and then all these pieces. White's down a pawn, but the activity of all these pieces is just super. I mean, I can just keep drawing arrows all day, right? If this is not enough compensation, I don't know what is, right? So I don't think Kramnik wanted to be this guy, right, against Magnus. So I forgot the knight. Knight can go here. Yeah, I don't think Kramnik wants to be this guy. So for a pawn. So Kramnik refuses to take on c3, and he plays c6, as I mentioned before, and Magnus still doesn't take the pawn. he plays rook d1, making sure that he doesn't get an isolated pawn, and also activating the rook. Now, Kramnik has a few problems. If he simply, let's say, I don't know, develop the bishop, this is not really a good square, because after a move like a5 and knight takes d4, there's going to be multiple threats, right? And it's very shaky. So Kramnik first decides to again blunt the bishop, play knight d5, very good move. Also helping the queen out. I mean, centralizing knight can't be wrong. Magnus plays knight d4, so he got back the pawn. So let's evaluate the position. I think white's still better because he has a lead in development. He has a rook out, a queen out, and his pieces are all centralized. So white's maybe a tad bit better, but still Kramnik hasn't made much mistakes. So, and he plays another good move, rook e8, activating the rook. Could be some back rank stuff in the end, and some sacrifice on e4. Or, oh, excuse me. So I mean, so Magnus has to be a little careful here. He first plays a good move, a5. Looks like dropping a pawn, doesn't it? It's only protected once, attacked twice. But let's look at the alternatives. Well, Magnus could have played knight f3, trying to play c4 and trap the knight. But the problem is, as I said before, the rook is very active. Kramnik has this move, queen e7, hitting the bishop. And then if you take, you win a pawn, but you lose development and you lose the two bishop advantage. And Kramnik will be more than happy to play this position. So now the attacker becomes the attacked. So Magnus has to keep up the initiative. He plays a5. Now this move looks strange, but there's a reason. Remember in the other line the queen went to e7? Now a5, the bishop has to take because bishop goes back. a6 would be uncomfortable. I mean, this is, everything's falling apart, right? So a5, bishop a5. Now what happens is, Magnus played knight f3. Notice this queen can't move because of, well, can move there, but notice how if it goes to e7, we lose. We can just check here first, and then we pick up a clean piece. So that's the point of Magnus's idea. And also, if the queen moves to c7 to prevent c4, this is the main threat, we at least, actually we win more than this. Didn't see this coming, right? Boom. Nasty. So yeah, very interesting. A very creative move. I believe he found this on the board. It's beautiful, beautiful move. Now, this is the kind of move that you want to play on over the board that causes problem. I believe Magnus only used like 15 minutes of his time, and Kramnik was down to like half an hour. So even if it still leads to equality or slightly better position for white, this is the kind of chess that you want to play that poses as much problems as you can for the opponent, and a human being is bound to break down, right? So although Kramnik does play a very good move here, he plays b5, excellent, excellent move, preventing c4 for the most part. And I believe c4 here would be a big mistake. Well, he doesn't lead too much, right? Black could just play bishop b7. Everything's somehow hold on together. I mean, we have the center knight guarded by a pretty good pawn and a bishop, and pretty good, solid. Everything's together. So Carlsen doesn't play. Carlsen doesn't play c4. He plays knight to d4. It was just so basically he played knight f3, b5, knight d4 to take advantage of the pawn. Now Kramnik played. He got under a lot of, pressure. This big pawn sacrifice probably confused him. He played bishop c7, trying to use tactics to hold the position together. He should have played bishop b7, guard the pawn, but he was probably scared of bishop takes, c takes, knight b5, winning the pawn back. But if you really think about it, white, black does have some isolated pawns, but compensated by two bishops. Magnus would probably try to squeeze out an advantage, but it's pretty close to equal. So this is what Kramnik should have done. But he got confused among the myriad of variations. He plays bishop c7. It looks like it's dropping a pawn, but Kramnik thought he could be pull a fast one and play queen d6, attacking the knight and threatening some nasty checkmate ideas later. But Magnus is known for his nerves of steel, right? He doesn't get flustered, one of his main strengths, and he calmly defends. I believe he made this move very quickly as well. He said, okay, you're attacking my knight, but I'm also attacking your knight, right? So I'm just going to make a quiet move, g3, preventing queen h2 check, and I have this extra threat of bishop f4 because the knight is pinned. Multi-purpose move. It's basically, the best defense is offense. So Magnus is basically doing both with g3. An excellent move. Now Kramnik can win a piece because this drops a rook, and he can't. I believe in the after the tournament he said he thought he could play bishop e6 and pose some problems to the knight, but all white has to do is play knight here, and then once again black's in trouble because Kramnik thought that he would get away with knight b4 attacking the queen, this queen for this queen, but all white has to do is take the pawn, and then everything is just attacked and he's gonna lose some material. So Kramnik here played bishop. So Kramnik went into this complicated thing as one of these moves could work, but none of them work actually. The best try was bishop b7 is what he played. Now he expected Magnus to play rook, bishop d5 so that he can just take back the piece. Take back the piece after bishop d5. Bishop f4 could be played. Queen d7, take, and it's almost an equal position. White might be slightly better, but nothing big deal. What if white took on d5 with the rook? Well, then possibly he can just take the queen and then threatening rook e4, getting the rook. Now I'll show you a sample variation to see how messed up white's position is. Bishop g2, rook e1 check, that rook. Now queen d5, killer. Bishop d5, game, set, and match. I mean, this pawn can't even move. It's pinned. There's nothing. There's nothing protecting. You had to do this. I mean, it's just over. So, this is probably what Kramnik was expecting, but Magnus plays. He doesn't take the knight first. He has this tricky move first. He doesn't take that. He plays bishop f4, making the queen take the knight first, so that you can do bishop d5 as a response. So this is kind of confusing, right? If we took, so this is what Magnus' plan is, to make the queen stack up and then take with the bishop. If he did rook d5, now the bishop can't take the rook anymore. I mean, it's kind of switched up, even though it's a white's move. So he wants the queen to go in front, jam up the pieces, and then put the bishop right there. Now, the queen is very much in second overloaded piece. It's guarding the bishop on c7. It's guarding the bishop on b7. It's also guarding the entry for the rook. So for example, queen b6 can be met with bishop takes b7, queen takes b7, and rook d7. Now you don't want to be black in this position. It's just rook on the 7th rank, pin. It's almost over. The queen is coming there. Black is going to collapse easily. This is just over. So pins everywhere, right? So Kramnik decides to be desperate and play some tricks. Rook e1. Idea being rook takes e1, queen takes d5, and then this is like almost forced checkmate. The only way to white to defend is to bail out and give up an entire, pretty much almost a rook. Although he does get a piece back and it's equal. So final try by Kramnik. Again, Magnus has nerves of steel. He just coolly plays king to h2, saying, okay, what do you got for me? I know there's a bunch of pins everywhere, but I'm still winning a queen. So Kramnik takes. Magnus takes the queen. Now if Kramnik takes this rook, Magnus will take here, and he's just pretty much a queen up. But Kramnik takes the other rook, Now, if he moves this rook, like for example, rook d7, it's mate. But rook goes back and says, "Okay, I'm getting this guy out." Rook d1, queen d1, and dust has cleared, and Magnus has a queen for a rook and a bishop, which is a almost decisive advantage. And in true Magnus style, he finishes off Kramnik. I'll just show you the rest of the moves. Rook d8 was played, queen e2 was played, bishop b6. So all Kramnik decided to keep the 2 bishops, but Magnus, all Magnus has to do is trade the 2 bishops, which he does. Bishop e3. Now the goal of white is to pick up these pawns and make a pass pawn and activate his king. So black does have a checkmate threat, but white coolly parries it with g4. The king is just gonna relax on f4, and then even invade into the position later. So Kramnik plays bishop c6. Magnus attacks the bishop first, takes the pawn. Kramnik tries to get some counterplay, but Magnus simply activates his king. And now he decides to invade, or at least get some space with f4, which is a very good move because he's going to take control at e6 square, getting rid of any checks, and then you use the f pawn maybe as a battering ram to open the king side, also get the king up here. So slowly, incrementally, he's going to improve his position. Kramnik plays g6, which also weakens the square, even though it burns f5. Now Magnus systematically gets his king somehow in here and get checkmates like this. Now we'll see how this happens. King e4, bishop e6, queen b7, threatening d5, rook c5, king d4. Rook has to go away now. King goes in, all the way in. Queen b8. It's funny how dark squares are weak because the bishop is on a light square. So, and now Kramnik decides to do some tricks here. Basically, if the queen goes here, this would be bad for white's a long way from winning now, right? So Magnus decides to create an umbrella. f5, pawn takes, umbrella. If he just moves his pawn, if he moves a pawn, there's no way the rook can check. It's like using the enemy forces against you. And now Magnus could easily win with g5, threatening to play queen f8 and then queen here. But the rook might go here, and then it's still queen f8 might be met with rook g5. So this is kind of complicated. He has to play h4, and he'll checkmate in a couple moves. But Magnus has to first prevent rook g2 with the forcing move, attack the rook first, rook f1, and finally plays g5, threatening to open the file with g6. So, and Kramnik here throwing the towel, but let's just look at how it could have ended. g6 check. King, if you take with the pawn, it's pretty much over. And if he doesn't take the pawn, king h8, which is kind of weird, but there's like a billion checkmates here. This is one of them. King here, yeah. Umbrella pawn is helping us a lot. So, yeah, I think it was one of the most beautiful games of the tournament, actually. Magnus played almost perfect chess. I don't think he made a single mistake in the entire game. And he played with a lot of spirit. He sacrificed a pawn. There's a quote that Magnus said, like, Anand brings the best in me, but Kramnik brings like the gangster in him. So he did, use the beautiful pawn sacrifice, played perfect chess, and really brought his attacking game here. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.